So I'm presenting today on preliminary plans and advanced plans. Both are milestones that we currently use and plan on continuing to use. Preliminary plan, actually let's go ahead and summarize where we are in the project life cycle first. Since we had a break at lunch, we start off with a list of recommended projects that region and our program levels have prospective projects at the beginning of planning our future step. And we go ahead and we scope those. We develop a list of projects we think we can afford. At that point, once we select and approve those, they go into the draft step. We wait, typically it's a year or two before we actually are able to get started on those. We kick off the design. We do the project initiation phase. And at the project initiation phase, that's where we develop and we finalize our scope, schedule, and budget. Really, with our charter, project initiation, we open our EA, we draft our agreements, and then we go ahead and finalize. We develop our draft charter, and that's where we lock in our scope, schedule, and budget at that time. From then, we proceed on to the DAP phase. And in the DAP phase, that's where we do a lot of our site investigations, a lot of our testing, drilling, hazmat, things like that in DAP. So that when we get to DAP, we're kind of at a very clean decision-making point. We've identified all the design, most of the design constraints, and then we've formalized it now in a new process called certified DAP. Now we go ahead and we start what David Kim called earlier was production design. And production design is we don't have to work. Here, let me go ahead and get you going. Production design is where essentially here's preliminary plans phase in a nutshell. It starts after DAP. We develop preliminary plans, which is plans only at this milestone. It's a very important time for technical and construction review. And then, of course, we summarize it all with our preliminary plans meeting at the end of the phase. But I guess the thing to note about preliminary plans is that it's a time for us we've made a lot of the major project decisions, and now we're really it's a time where we buckle down and work together to communicate together with the individual designers. So roadway typically is our cog of the wheel in the detailed design process. But now our bridge and roadway, are you communicating with each other? So for example, roadway designs a guardrail, bridge designs a bridge rail, who designs a transition? Are you having that conversation? So those are the kinds of details that we're working out in preliminary plans. Another important thing about preliminary plans is that I feel that the term plans really doesn't do it justice because what it is, it's our start of our contract for our construction. So this is a time where we can focus on the details, we can focus on the notes, we can focus on all those things so that we end up with a better bid package that our construction folks have to manage. I summarize the main deliverables for preliminary plans are plan sheets, construction cost estimate, and construction schedule. We've already done a construction schedule in DAP, I believe in the new DAP, but this is a time when we put our detailed plan sheets together with all the disciplines, is that we reevaluate how much this project costs, and then what kind of a schedule time frame we're in, and kind of validate what we've already done. One of the big things with construction cost estimate, actually, here are some of our other deliverables here. I put these in here. I'm not going to go through them because we don't have a lot of time, but I figured that you would have access to these in the future for some other deliverables that we offer. So I'm going to skip right to design and scope first because that's kind of where I was headed. Is that when you do your construction estimate, this is a good time, project leaders and roadway designers and all, to verify if you have differences in what you had in DAP, what you had any previous milestone. Always look at your construction estimates, and this is where you look for things like scope creep. And you say, for example, this is at this point, you run your roadway estimate, which you've incorporated everybody's estimate. It's a time for you to say, well, how come we are higher than what we said we were going to be at DAP? So that's a time to go through and really look through the details and see, wait a second, we said we had 9 luminaires in DAP, and now we have 25. How did that happen? So that's a good time for everybody, all of us together, to work on doing what we said we were going to do and stay within scope, schedule, and budget. I put an optional on some real simple projects, chip seals and maybe some 1-hour paving jobs and things like that. A lot of times for preliminary plans, we have the option of just going straight to advanced. So, and that's really a tech center by tech center, an area by area decision. But there's, I very rarely for a simple chip seal job have advanced plans or have preliminary plans milestone. It's a good time to, our phase estimates, we look at all of our phase estimates at each one of these times. Our phases are really our funding phases, PE, right-of-way, utilities, construction, other. We look at all those to make sure we're still within our budget, what we said we were going to do, within our scope and within our schedule. The design schedule, we ask everybody, this is a good time for you to communicate with your project leader or communicate with other team members if you're having problems time-wise or schedule-wise and try and figure out a way to mitigate. It's also a time where we'll go through and look at the status of our disciplines, environmental, where are we at with our environmental clearances, where are we at with our, with our right-of-way, those other entities. And we also try to identify specification needs because we're really thinking about timelines. We're thinking about what do we need to add to the specs. Because at advanced plans, that's when we first we bring in our specifications, but we're starting to think about it at preliminary plans and make notes of what are some of our impacts going to be for our specials as they come forward, and are we going to have any that are non-standard that are going to take time to process. So advanced plans phase starts after preliminary plans. You develop the advanced plans incorporating all the preliminary comments, and so that's really the big part of the plans part that you see. It's where we draft our special provisions, and then this one is really all discipline review for completeness and accuracy. And I put that here, but for preliminary plans and advanced plans, I guess all of our milestones, it's really important that all of us really go look outside of the box. Don't just look at your discipline. Look at it, try and take a step back and make sure that we're doing everything right. So it's not just specifically about yours, but we're a team trying to make these decisions together. The advanced plans deliverables are, of course, plan sheets, and special provisions are the big ones right there. This is the first time we have the construction contract to start together. We have the plans and specs. And so the review we're going to do, we did a good technical review of preliminary plans. We've incorporated all those comments. Now this is the first time that we get to see it all together and with the plans and specs and try and make sure that everything works well together. Especially, this is a good time to continue to have the conversations with our project manager's office to make sure they're included in all of the review. Again, construction cost estimate, this is just like before. It's a good time to review your estimate and make sure everything's in scope, and then we have utility relocation plans usually come up at this time too, if you have any utility impacts. Here's a list of the other deliverables. Again, I probably won't go through those, but the important things to note if you do have any changes to specs that you're working on is that you really work with your spec writer. This is actually the point in the milestone where your spec writer comes in to be the most active, and a lot of times takes over the process. Before advanced plans, the roadway designer is a pretty key and this might vary by tech center a little bit, but the roadway designers are the hub or the cog of the wheel. And as you get to advanced plans, it kind of transitions a little bit to the spec writer. Again, the same things we did before as a design and scope, reviewing our phase estimates, review the design schedule and make sure that we're still in schedule for PS&E, review our construction schedule, and then verify the status of our environmental clearances and right-of-way, or things that we would do at advanced. And that's what I have. Is there anybody have any questions? Yes?
Are the plan sheets and utility relocation plans, do we have GIS layers that match those footprints?
I do not know the answer to that question.
I wanted to find out if the plan sheets and utility relocation plans were kind of accessible through a GIS website where the footprints might be provided as an overlay. Because what we're doing on our project is trying to figure out where we might have excess ODOT property, and understanding or being able to overlay those design plans over pieces of real estate might help us identify what the purpose of those apparently vacant areas might be.
I'll answer it. Relocation plans for the utility may be just on paper. They might not be electronic or any like that, so you might not be able to overlay it. Because we struggle with that too. We get them in, and sometimes they'll put them into to make sure where they are, they'll put them into the CAD file, but I don't think that we'd have that for you. The plan sheets, all that stuff, all the stuff we gather can be turned over to that kind of use, I think. Yeah, it'll be in ProjectWise.
One last thing, if there are any more questions, that I would just like to say is good communication is probably doesn't get stressed enough in our design process. There's many times where I'll walk, come up to somebody's cubicle, Jim, come over here, walk 3 cubicles down, this is Janet. Please work with Janet, So there's a lot of times that you guys can walk down yourselves. You don't need, a project leader necessarily to help you. Please, communication is extremely important, face-to-face. Emails are great for documenting things, but phone conversations in person, I think 80% of communication is nonverbal, so it's very important that you visit with your counterparts, and especially when you're working in preliminary plans and you're working on coordinating, ITS, say a VMS sign with roadway, who's going to do the trenching, who's going to do, and actually look at a drawing together. And I'm sure now a lot of you have used Skype, so if you're remote, the next best thing, which I use a lot, I love, is Skype, and being able to talk to people on the phone and work through the details. That communication really and truly is the basis for us having a clean and complete design. So that's all I have. Thank you.